So, good day. I'm here to talk to you about visualizing global digital money readiness, and particularly how Citigroup leveraged Tableau Public to deliver a visualization of global digital money readiness. So, what does a London bus have to do with digital money, and what does digital money have to do with Tableau? Well, if any of you traveled on a London bus today on your way, you will probably know that as of the 6th of July 2014, you will no longer be able to pay using the legal tender of notes or coins on these buses. So, in fact, London buses will go cash-free as of the 6th of July. So what this is just one example of part of a progression from money as a physical, tangible thing to a more digital manifestation of value. So what are the implications for this beyond not having to stand in line to get on a bus behind someone who's counting out the contents of their piggy bank? Well, today I would like to tell you the story of how a piece of research jointly conducted by Citi and Imperial College in London produced an index which ranked 90 countries according to their readiness to adopt digital money, and how this index came to be represented in a Tableau dashboard and hosted on Tableau Public, and of course embedded into Citi's Institutional Clients Group website, which I'll show you more of later. But first, I want to give you a little bit of background as to what digital money is and what indeed the project was all about. Well, money has been one of the most influential factors shaping human history, driving not only wealth creation and socio-economic development, as well as religion, ethics, morality, and fine art. And it's got a number of purposes in society today, of course. It's a unit of account, it's a unit of measurement and recording of value. It's also a store of value and a way of exchanging value, of course. It's become integral to the functioning of society and has had a part to play and developed over the course of human history. So going right back to the beginnings when barter was the primary form of exchanging value, that was the first phase. Then folk who lived near the sea started to use seashells, others used stones or pieces of metal, eventually becoming coins. With the advent of printing, notes started becoming in use, and it was really with the advent of telecommunications that money became more digital. And now we see digital money coming across in terms of internet transfers, in terms of near-field communications, NFC communications, through SMSs in things like M-Pesa, where we can exchange value using text messages from our mobile phone. Also now, more recently, we see developments such as Bitcoin, where the money becomes completely digital and divorced from the standard currencies in use of the day. So where does Citi come into this? Well, in January 2013, Citi and Imperial College London hosted the inaugural Digital Money Symposium in London, which had over 100 attendees representing the entire spectrum of the digital money ecosystem. The symposium laid the foundation to increase the understanding and accelerate the adoption of digital money, the transformational promise which exactly 1 year later, and Imperial College hosted their second annual Digital Money Symposium at the Saatchi Gallery in London. This time with over 120 attendees. This year we introduced the results of the research and thought leadership initiative that has been an effort to identify and capture a global set of metrics that form the basis of the Digital Money Readiness Index. The event and the index have received significant press coverage, and we'd like to share a copy of the research report with you titled Getting Ready for Digital Money, a Roadmap. The report set out to ask and answer two fundamental questions. Does digital money adoption make a difference? And what factors affect the outcome of the Digital Money Initiative? So if you want to find out more and have a look at the report yourself, then you will see on the front page of this presentation there's a QR code which you can scan, which will take you to the visualization itself, or and access the Digital Money Symposium microsite, which will then give you access to some more information around the symposium, as well as the report itself and the Tableau visualization. So as I mentioned, the index itself has received a fair amount of coverage. One of the keynotes at Tableau on tour in London is from The Economist, the editor of The Economist, and the Digital Money Index has received coverage in the blog, in a blog on the Economist website from Schumpeter, which is always a pretty compelling read. And the focus of the blog there was looking at the relationship between the Readiness Index and adoption in particular countries, and discuss some of the reasons for the outliers. And for those of you who enjoy data visualizations, which I'm sure is all of you, there's a great visualization in that particular blog, so have a look. Also, Irving, who was one of the folk involved in the creation of the index, is a regular contributor to the Wall Street Journal, and he was featured in a particular blog post there as well, which again you can have a look at your leisure. So a bit more information around the Digital Money Index and how did we get to it? So digital money is an area of extreme interest in recent times. Digital money, we mean monetary exchange by electronic means. So that can include all non-cash transactions, anything such as credit cards, debit cards, stored value schemes, and other non-paper-based value transfer mechanisms within the scope of this particular index. We've seen a significant drive by governments and businesses to digitize money and move towards a cashless economy. At the same time, consumers have been buoyed by changing payment behaviors. Consumers in mature markets are seeking ease of transactions by using, for example, their mobile devices as a medium for payments. The unbanked folk without bank accounts, out of necessity, are adopting alternate digital payment solutions enabled by technological advancements. There are examples abound of anecdotal evidence of the benefits of digital money adoption, from touting increasing cashlessness of certain developed market economies to celebrating success of digital money initiatives in emerging markets. While there's a clear desire to increase digital money adoption globally, success has been mixed. The majority of the money flows in some countries are digitized, and at the same time there are countries that are predominantly rely on cash. Consequently, we thought it was important to gather evidence and analyze on the topic on a reasonable global basis using a scientific approach. So from that perspective, the two questions that we were looking to answer were fundamentally, why bother? Does digital adoption make a difference? Is it possible to quantify the benefits to governments, corporations, and individuals? And the next question was, what matters? What are the factors that affect the outcome of a digital money initiatives? Why are there varying degrees of success across digital money initiatives in some countries and jurisdictions? So a quote which we came across recently was, if we have data, let's look at the data. If all we have of opinions, let's go with mine, from Jim Barksdale, the former CEO of Netscape. Well, we know what happened to Netscape, but still that particular fact remains, is that really, if there's data available, let's use it, and let's use it to inform our particular opinions. So what I'll cover in the next part of the presentation is a bit more of a deep dive into the index part of the work which was done. So that covers the question of what matters. So how did we go about measuring? How did we go about building the index? And then probably more interesting, for this audience, how did we go about visualizing the particular index? So let's first have a look at the four factors that explain, for the most part, according to our research, how ready a given country is to adopt digital money. So the first factor we look at is the institutional environment. So within this particular factor, we consider the national institutions and characteristics within which digital money needs to operate. This includes factors like property rights and the government's support for innovation. For example, while India's telecom policy has been under a lot of scrutiny due to corruption charges, it is a fact that it is easy regulation that invited and encouraged private sector investment, resulting in the creation of the world's second largest mobile market. So part of the things which we measured here to understand the ability of a country to adopt digital money based on their institutional environment was the rule of law, market efficiency, regulatory quality, as well as the innovation environment. So those 4 factors were seen as contributors towards the institutional environment. The second factor we considered was the enabling infrastructure. So by that, this factor considers technological and financial infrastructure which underpins the deployment and operation of digital money. Both regulatory and operational aspects are considered. So from that perspective, we looked at the ability to access financial services within a country, as well as particular financial restrictions which were in place, as well as the readiness in terms of the information communications and technology side of things. How ready is that? The third factor which we considered was the solution provisioning. So this factor consists of the industries and functions that drive the provision of digital money solutions and their most frequent use cases. For example, NTT Docomo's contactless payment service saw huge market uptake due to its alliance with East Japan Railway. Oyster Card is another success example whose adoption was driven by Transport for London promoting its use. And further that the fact that buses will be cashless as of the 6th of July 2014, which will no doubt drive some of the last holdouts who are no longer or who are not using Oyster Cards to become avid users of their Oyster Cards. The last was the so-called propensity to adopt. This pillar captures the rate at which consumers and corporates adopt new innovation in general and digital money in particular. So what we measured here was business sophistication, ICT usage overall, perceived corruption, as well as technological diffusion. So if we consider, for example, mobile point of sales as an example of market innovation that has witnessed rapid diffusion, the premise being that using a smartphone as a point of sale terminal has enabled small individuals by all taxi drivers, maybe you call a taxi today instead of catching a bus, to accept card payments, thus unlocking new revenue while increasing the convenience for the end user. So a win-win there. Another example is Square, a leader in mobile point of sale, started services in 2010, so relatively recently. Today, they've signed up over 4 million merchants, and they processed over 15 billion payments last year. According to a survey conducted by Javelin, 15% of micro businesses with revenues less than $100,000 have adopted mobile point of sale. So that becomes an important factor in moving towards digital readiness. Okay, good. So I think thank you for bearing with me and getting to grips with some of the key concepts of digital money, as well as the main factors that we measured in the readiness for digital money across various countries. What I want to do now is spend a bit more time looking at how we built up the index and how we went about visualizing it. So how were these particular pillars measured? So each of the pillars was mapped to a source of data, which was largely driven by our colleagues, our research colleagues at Imperial College Business School, where they went through a number of open data sources. Anyone who is familiar with creating visualizations off the back of open data will most likely be familiar with some, if not all, of these particular sources. So you'll see there a list of each of the particular sources. The World Economic Forum was a great source of data to back up each of the pillars, as well as the United Nations. The World Bank as well has some really good sets of data that can be used in also. Transparency International, of course, for the perceived corruption and things like that. Probably an unusual one, which folk might not have seen before, is the IBTTA, which is around measuring, tolling, and those sorts of things, which was an input into the index. Euromonitor International as well, and the good old faithful, if all else fails, Wikipedia. So once we'd collected all of that data, the recipe to convert that into an index was done effectively with 832 lines of R code. So this was done by a very bright researcher by the name of Antoine Vernet from the Imperial College Business School. He wrote that code, a little snippet on there. Please don't QA or look at it too closely. It's just meant to be an example there. So the open data was assembled, normalized. You might see some of the normalization going on in the code there, and then constructed into the particular index. So what was ranked? Well, in terms of the availability of data, that became an important factor for determining which countries were put into the index and those which weren't able to be ranked. So at the end of it, 90 countries came through in scope, and they came through with scores as well as rankings across the 4 factors we discussed on the previous slide, as well as the 15 subcomponents that were used to measure that. Then the statistical technique, PCA, primary component analysis, was used as the core to take the inputs and spit that out in a single index. Work was any particular visualization tool in mind. It was done in order to produce an index, which was then formed the basis of the research report. So then the challenge came how to visualize the data in this index and allow detailed in-depth analysis of the output of this particular algorithm. So that is where the Tableau team came into play. Our team came into the frame almost by a serendipitous connection that happened within the Citi organization, where we have this collaboration tool called Citi Collaborate that's based on Jive, which other folk might have seen. And it's through participating in a data visualization discussion, two parties, the money index and the Tableau team that had experience of using Tableau to visualize data. The primary focus of the team was on data exploration and driving particular business insights and decisions from data, whereas this presented a slightly different challenge, one which we wrapped our arms around gratefully, was to do more of a dashboarding kind of exercise, something that would be external facing. You can access it on the internet today. So if you either search for Citi Digital Money Index, it'll turn up and you can access it via that link. Or, as I mentioned earlier, you can scan the QR code on the front page or access the website citi.com Digital Money Symposium. So this was a real challenge for the team to take the skills which we built and data insights into something a bit more formal, a bit more dashboarding, so a slightly different set of skills. So it's available to access via the internet today. One of my real key objectives here is to drive traffic to the site, so it would be very well received by the Tableau community within Citi if as many of you as possible would visit the Digital Money Readiness Index and have a play. It is on Tableau Public, so you could even download it and come up with some own visualizations of your own to drive some insights. Anyway, what you're seeing on the screens now is a shot of what it looks like inside the Citi Digital Money Symposium microsite. The link that will take you to it is Digital Money Index under the 2014 Digital Money Symposium side of things. So what I want to do now is step through some of the key components of the dashboard's look and feel and discover how it was brought to the internet using Tableau Public. And what I'm hopeful is today at least a few of you will benefit from some of the insights which we gained in using Tableau as a dashboarding tool as well as an insight driving tool. So what I want to talk about is really the creative process, how we came to how it looks, as well as how it feels, the dashboard interactivity, as well as how it gets to your screen on your favorite browser in your home or office. So in terms of how it looks, I want to spend a bit of time looking at the Viz overload, which we created in the beginning as a way of trying to get to grips with the index, as well as choosing particular eye candy to make it attractive. I want to show you the process which we went to end up in all the some of the to particular visualizations. I don't know if any of you have added flags in the past, but it's something that's worthy of a bit of attention. Dashboard interactivity. I guess this was an area where we wanted to explore some of the features of Tableau and get to understand how we could make our dashboards a bit more interactive. So two of the things I wanted to share with you were around the use of parameters, as well as some of the actions and how we use those on the dashboard. Then, in terms of how it gets to you in your home or office, I'd like to talk a little bit about the hosting, the embedding, the sizing and contracting side of things. Good. So in terms of choosing your eye candy here, what we wanted to do is choose the right look and feel. And one of the things that stuck with me in terms of creating impactful visualizations is Edward Tufte's concept of data to ink ratio. So what we wanted to make sure is that we were creating something that was ideally eye-catching, but also something which created and generated the most amount of data, encapsulated the most amount of data with the least amount of ink. At the same time, making sure that we didn't create something that was just eye-catching but obscured the information. Our primary objective was to communicate the information. So typically our approach when doing data discovery is just to take a new data set, which digital money was at the outset, and run through it as many different visualizations as we can, often driven primarily by the good old faithful of bar charts and making sure we understand the dimensionality, the percentages contribution of each of the measures. And that really gives us a nice feel for the data set, where the outliers, what are the major contributors, and helps to tease out some of the interesting stories and look at the possible visualizations that we might want to use in the end product. So that's a process we went through. I mean, my real challenge when looking at data with Tableau is to stop that Viz overload, stop creating new visualizations, and stand back and look at where the key stories are. But as a first step, I would really encourage that as a way of getting to grips with the data and getting to grips with what it is you're trying to picture in the information. So it's at that stage that we had a whole bunch of visualizations, and also it wasn't just about the stories, it was also about the visual styles. So in terms of eye candy, what we created on the right-hand side, you can see there is some of the options. So we called this option here with the dots, we called that the Smarties option. It had a bunch of colored dots representing. So what that did is gave us a very low amount of ink that we were using, and ability to represent countries as a single dot. And if you introduce a color scheme, it looks quite bright. Color doesn't actually impart any new information, so that was very much pandering towards the look and feel rather than something which was going to be effective communication of data. Then we used the bars, so we've got Smarties as a type of candy. We've also got bars because they were red for the negatives, we called them bleeding bars. Much more easy to tell potentially the relative, particularly when you had a large number of elements to consider, the bars were a lot more effective than the circles, and I guess that's why Tableau recommends or suggests bar charts generally where you've got this sort of data. And to that stage, we reached out to the Tableau professional services team for a bit of a kickstart to help us with a few thoughts. So a gentleman by the name of Max, he spent a bit of time with the data and created some very effective visualizations and some very effective dashboards. And one of the key pieces of candy that we plucked out of his work, which he did for us, was using this combination, which you'll see on the right-hand side here, which made its way into the final version. And some people call these pin pops, and it's effectively a combination of both a line chart as well as these circles which you saw on the Smarties. So we felt this was something which had a little bit of visual impact, something which gave a bit more of a scale to the endpoints. It did use probably a bit more ink, but with the thin line, potentially, maybe we're not giving away too much over there. But the feeling was that was fairly visually impactful, something that was relatively unique and something which communicated the information in a meaningful way. So thanks to Max for that particular breakthrough. I'm just going to flip over to my demo, and in terms of make a lolly for yourself, I'll do that from scratch. This is just a simple diagram particular technique. So at the heart of it is very much a dual axis. So what we've done is we've added the country name. So we bring the country name in. So we've got a, and let's say we want to have a look at their particular scores. So we can drag that in once. And as I mentioned, the default option there is the good old bar chart. So then the next thing we want to do is bring that in again so that we get two identical sides. We want to then convert the first score from being bar chart to circle. So then we get our dots. So that's where our Smarties come into play. If we want to add the little stick onto our lolly, we can then go to the bar chart and drop the size of the bar lolly. So the lolly is pretty small, so we may be a bit miserly there, but again, that made it a little bit more effective. To go in here under this particular access menu and say make it a dual axis. And that is when we get to create our lollies like this. To clean it up, what we want to do is get rid of the axis because we don't like that cluttering it up. And we also want to rank it. We want to rank the columns largest to smallest over there. If we wanted to show the particular values, we could show those on the pins, and we might want to drop down the precision on that. So that's really a quick way to make the lollies like we did for the visualization. Good. So I think that's enough about the eye candy side of things. The next challenge was to reduce down this vast number of visualizations which we'd created. A lot of maps, a lot of bar charts, a lot of alternatives. So what we did is we used an interactive session with some of the key folk who were involved in the creation and oversight of the digital money index, and got their feelings as to which of our visualizations created the most compelling stories. And we really narrowed it down to 3 visualizations, which you will see on the website today. And that's really focusing on the map. It's focusing in on the individual countries themselves. So let's go back to Tableau and show you that. So the key visualizations which are available is the map, which shows by the color scheme the 4 different readiness clusters that we see there today, as well as each of the 90 countries visualized in terms of their overall readiness, as well as their scores across each of the pillars. So there you can see that for Denmark, they're ranked number 8. Their enabling infrastructure is pretty much lower than anyone else. So our lollipops help to illustrate the story and show some of the outliers. Also then we've got a country details slide. So if you're interested in particular countries, you can navigate to a particular country and see how they scored on the other elements. So you can see here, for example, Canada, they're ranked 14 overall, 6th for enabling infrastructure. So in terms of their financial and ICT readiness, they are some way ahead of their peers. So the other areas are potentially dragging them down over there. The other one was to create a scatter plot which compares and contrasts the cashless intensity, which was measured by MasterCard outside of our index, as well as the readiness index, and that was the feature on the Trumpeter blog on the Economist website. So those were the 3 visualizations which were determined to be the most impactful. I wanted to talk about the black edition, because those of you who heard me mention the data to ink ratio might immediately have noticed that we chose a black background rather than a white background. So our early versions had a white background, and what we felt is by moving to the black edition, as it were, considering this wasn't going to be printed out in terms of ink perspective, a white background and a black background were probably equal partners. But what we did we think, is create a bit more visual impact by using something which was slightly different potentially from a lot of the visualizations you'll see. So that's in combination with some of the other elements. For those of you familiar with cars, you'll realize that the black edition is something that a lot of manufacturers, particularly in Europe, use as a differentiator when they bring out a fancy new model, particularly a faster or more sleek-looking or more aerodynamic version. So that's what we were really looking to replicate by moving it towards a dark background. But also, of course, on things like iPads, that renders quite effectively. The next thing I wanted to show you was a little trick which we learned through the process of creating these dashboards, was using parameters to switch dimensions that are used in particular dashboard filters. So again, I'll hop back to the visualization, and really what's happening behind the scenes here is when you choose a country grouping, we've got 3 options here. We've got the OECD countries. If we choose that, it filters out all of the non-OECD countries, and we're only left with the countries that are members of that. And of course, that applies to both the map and the visualization down below. So we can see that Finland is number 1, and of course it's an OECD country. The lowest rank OECD country is Korea at number 20. Oh, actually, let's scroll down. Mexico at number 40 in the index out of 90. So what's going on behind the scenes here is this is really a Boolean parameter or a Boolean dimension on each of the particular rows in each of the countries. So let's just hop out into this particular visualization. If we go to the sheet over here, actually on second thoughts, let's go to this one over here. So we'll go to the country bars. Let's go to that particular sheet. So within here, we can see there's let's look at the data for Finland. If we look at the data for Finland, we'll see that if I look at the underlying data, of course, we'll see that there's a column for each of the OECD and the 2 MCSI ratings. Boom, boom. So what do we do with that? Well, we create a parameter. So within this parameter, we've called it select a country grouping, and within there, we have added each of those columns of data and allowed that to be selected. So we've right-clicked on here and said show parameter control. So here we can select a country grouping, and those options that we've programmed into the parameter turn up there. So at the moment, there's no link to the data. This is all just parameter driven. We could type anything in there and nothing would happen if we selected it. But to make it happen, we've created this calculated measure called selection choice. And within there, we have if statement, which, depending on which country grouping is selected, then it points to a particular dimension. So if MCSI emerging market is selected, then this particular calculated measure becomes the dimension MCSI emerging markets and will filter out any of the particular elements that are marked as true there. You can see potentially we had some other classifications which didn't make it into the final version. The final version, we've got the two MCSI, emerging and frontier markets, as well as the OECD. So by using a parameter where we program in the names of the columns we want to access, and then in an if statement in the in a calculated measure, we then link that through to the dimension that we wanted to hit. So the reason we had to do that is because obviously a country could be OECD and it could also be an emerging or frontier market. So to make sure we didn't have overlaps there or an inability to code that into the data, we used that particular technique. So we felt that was quite an effective technique for effectively reducing the clutter on the website, on the front page, because the alternative would be to have the real default option would be to have a drop down for each of these with a yes/no option in each of those, which would take up a bit more screen real estate. So making it a bit more effective in terms of use, that was the mechanism which we used there. Good. Actions. This was something which we felt was quite effective to really allow folk to explore a bit more in a more of a free-form kind of way around the data. So actions are pretty simple things to do, and what happens is when you add the action, here we can see if we wanted to see more about South Africa here, we could click that particular option and it would take us to a sub-site, sub-page that shows us all the data for South Africa, and we can see that South Africa is number 31 out of 90, which puts them in the emerging category. And if they need to work on one thing, it's probably their solution provisioning. So they're much higher. Infrastructure is strong. Institutional environment is round about par for their rating. Propensity to adopt is round about par. But what's driving them down potentially is solution provisioning around electronic payments, transport, and e-government. So that's something for them to focus on. Now, as you probably know, actions come in terms of the link up here. So this is simply a link created in the dashboard from both the country bars, which is the bar chart, and of course the map up above. We selected the menu option, and what that does is when you add that as a menu option, it turns up as a hyperlink, as you saw there with the link to South Africa. And it pushes us through to the particular sub, the target being, of course, country details. It passes the filter through to all of the subsets. So that's quite a cool feature which allows us to move from one page to the next. Initially, we wanted to use the select option there, which you'll see is the second option. The reason we didn't is because, of course, country details will, in this format, only accept one country coming in. If you have multiple countries selected, then it starts to try and display two countries' data in something that's designed for a single country. And if you have a click, then you could, of course, highlight multiple countries. And if you click all of that, of course, it will mess up what's going on behind the scenes in the parameter passing from one screen to the next. So we thought the hyperlink was, so the moment if you click on one country, it just highlights that country and gives you the particular scores down below. If you hover over, it gives you the relative rankings and allows you to hyperlink. So we thought that was the best option for combining actions to move from one level of detail to the next, and also having something which was meaningful on the tooltip over there. Good. So parameters can really help you to declutter your dashboard, making it easier to view and condensing multiple Boolean choices into a succinct list in a drop-down, whereas these particular actions can be used to link parts of the dashboard together and create a deeper analysis. The last thing I wanted to demo to you was flags. So linking flags in, as you know, Tableau creates maps in seconds, but displaying flags like we do on the country dashboard is something which is not potentially as easy. It's definitely not as easy as creating the maps. So what we first needed to do to get the flags working was to find a source of flags, which we did. So what we've got is, I believe these are PNG image files on the main, PNG image files of a whole bunch of country flags, all nicely created in a glossy format. And or Tableau repository. A lot of these, or all of these with the exception of glossy flags, are the standard ones which come with Tableau, and we've dropped those into this particular directory. So the first task is to source the flags. The second task is to link those particular flags into your visualization. So to do that, we've added the countries as rows. We've then moved it from the marks to be a shape. And in terms of the shape, we've gone in and edited the shape, and we've assigned the glossy flags, which then turns up as an option. What I was hoping was that somehow magically Tableau would be able to map the countries into their individual flags. That is not the case. We needed to do that manually. The country's flags are wrong and quite time consuming as well. In fact, I'm a little bit paranoid that still there are potentially some flags lurking out there that are incorrectly mapped. So for example, if we wanted to map Australia there, we would go down and find the Australian flag, which I think hopefully is that one. We would then click it and it would map to Australia, and when we clicked OK, we would see there that the Australian flag had morphed into the correct flag, whereas Austria is clearly not the right flag, nor Bangladesh. So that's something that to test your general knowledge, challenge your team, challenge others to go and map individual countries to their particular flags, and that was probably the most labor-intensive part of the creation of the visualization. But as a result, hopefully what you get is something that's a bit more interesting from a visual perspective and gives a bit more of a feeling for identification along with a map for that particular country. One thing you might have noticed is how do we get back to the main visualization once we've gone through to a particular country. If we want to go and see something about Mexico, that's fine. Mexico, I think that's a Mexican flag. How do we go back? Well, again, we created an action. So we created a particular measure or a particular dimension, which was hard-coded with the text, go back to the overview. So if we go to that particular sheet, we can see there that we've just got this go back to the overview calculated dimension, which is just hard-coded to a piece of text. And again, we've made it a shape and we've selected a back arrow. So that's a fairly trivial way to create just effectively a graphic element using the dimensions and visualization techniques within Tableau. Then again, you create on the dashboard, you create an action behind that. Boom, boom. And again, on this one, you use select and you pass it back to the digital money readiness and you show all values. So you don't just pass back one country, you pass back all the values to make sure that it shows all the values in that case. You might have noticed on the slide there was a bit of a screamy face, and the reason for that was twofold. The one is the labor-intensive and the high-risk nature of mapping the flags, and the second was in the final version of click twice on that button to actually fire the action. So we finished with Mexico, that's fine. Let's go and look at Kazakhstan. If we go and look at Kazakhstan, there's Kazakhstan, that's the Kazakhstan flag. Let me know if it isn't. To go back to the overview, we need to click once to deselect the button and then twice to go back. So that's something which I guess adds a little bit to the learning curve of the end user. And it's just a minor annoyance, but it's really providing an effective feature to navigate between the two items. So maybe you'd want to vote for that behavior to be modified in a future version of Tableau. So yeah, some of the pieces behind the scenes over there on how we made the navigation and graphical nature. I must just call out Rafi. If you haven't attended one of her dashboard sessions, do so. She's got some really good insights into how to make dashboards hang together. And she was instrumental in both getting the flags up and running and also in getting the actions built into our dashboard. So thanks a lot to Rafi for her assistance there. In terms of hosting and embedding, well, this was really the easy part. If you haven't used Tableau Public before, it's really a very simple process. We created an account for Citi on the Tableau Public website, and within the desktop version, we published to Tableau, saved to the web. And then effectively, we had a version of the visualization up and running on the website, on the Tableau Public website, in a matter of minutes. Then once you've done that, you can easily extract from the website the embed code and pass that particular embed code over to the web team, who then were able to embed it into the digital money website. So that is what is coming up on the screen now, is the digital money visualization embedded into the website, which you saw right at the beginning. And in terms of the adoption, it's something, because of the prevalence of something like embedding a YouTube video into websites, it's something which is very much part and parcel of what web development teams these days do. So embedding a Tableau visualization is no different to embedding a YouTube video. So it's something they're comfortable with and something which doesn't raise too many additional pieces of work on the website. So typically organizations won't be able to, unless they meet a number of sort of criteria. So the reason we were able to use Tableau Public is the fact that the data sources which we're using are all open source. The fact that the finished visualization is public domain, something we want people to see outside of Citi, it's not proprietary. Also, the ease of creating the visualization. What we found is creating the dashboards involved a minimum amount of time, something which was very easily done. So although we could have potentially created the same dashboard in other tools, what we found is, in terms of the speed of being able to create these dashboards, is absolutely unrivaled in the hands of a Tableau, someone who's familiar with Tableau. So what we've got is a pretty simple dashboard. Hopefully it's effective, something which has got a few little tips and tricks in terms of interactivity in it. But in terms of speed of creation, this was done as a hobby behind the scenes in folks' spare time. So the ease of creating the visualization, ease of uploading the finished visualization onto the Tableau public website, and of course the ease of embedding the finished visualization into the Citi.com website. So in terms of the amount of organizational effort that it took to create this visualization, I believe that this was completely unrivaled in its ability to get something embedded into the Citi.com website in a minimum amount of time. So hosting, absolutely something which was facilitated and made easy and made the whole ease of use side of things an absolute pleasure to utilize. So good. Hopefully today what I've done is given you an overview of what digital money is, what it means to Citi and Imperial Business School, and also some of the key facets of how to measure digital money readiness and how to go about visualizing this on a Tableau dashboard. So this is very much a journey which we're going on digital money. The Symposium will be an annual event. The index will be refreshed. The visualization will be refreshed. The outputs will be enhanced. So this is something that is part of a journey for digital money. And it may be not a stretch to say that this initial work only scratches the surface of what is possible with digital money and the visualization and exploration of this data. And there is more work to be done. However, I do hope this work provides a platform for you and the broader community to explore your own ideas and your own solutions around digital money adoption. Thank you very much, and good luck with digital money.